Hi, my name is Becca and I work in the Teens Department at the main library. To start today's video, I'm going to be reading you the first few pages of The Lion of Mars by Jennifer L. Holm. If you like what you hear, don't forget to check it out. The trip to Mars was the hardest thing they'd ever experienced. That's what the grown-ups said. The small, cramped ship, the constant fear of something going wrong, the knowledge that they could never return to Earth. But honestly, it sounded like a cakewalk compared to sharing a bedroom with Albie, because he snored. I hadn't had a decent night's sleep since Albie started bunking with me. I tried just about everything to block the noise. Earplugs, sleeping under the blanket, even a thick hat with ear flaps, but none of them worked. It was surprising because Albie was perfect. He was easygoing and did his chores without complaining. Of all of us kids, he was the least likely to throw a fuss. The grown-ups trusted him, even Cy. But it turned out there was one thing Albie wasn't good at: sleeping quietly. And I didn't know which was worse, Albie snoring or Trey wanting to change rooms. For as long as I could remember, Trey had slept in the bed across from mine. My drawings of cats and his drawings of aliens had papered the walls. Our plastic models crowded the shelves together. Then, 2 months ago, Trey suddenly asked to switch bedrooms. Next thing I knew, Trey was sleeping across the hall in the older kids' room with Vera and Flossie, while Albie was snoring in mine. And me? I wasn't sleeping at all. Neither was Leo from the looks of it. The old cat was sitting up in bed, flicking his tail in annoyance. This room-switching thing had happened once before. Back when Trey and I were little, the grown-ups had moved us boys into one room and the girls into the other. Albie was older than me and Trey, and so he was allowed to stay up later. The problem was that Albie would make a lot of noise when he came to bed, and he'd wake us up. The experiment was abandoned after a week. Now, all these years later, Albie was keeping me awake again. Across the room from me, Albie let out a loud, waffling snort. I groaned, pulling the pillow over my head. "Albie," I said. He didn't move. "Albie!" I shouted. He sat up abruptly, looking around the dimly lit room in confusion. Albie was tall, with broad shoulders. Darby said he would have made a good football player. Football was an Earth game where he threw around a ball and knocked into people. I didn't really understand it. "What's wrong, Belle?" Albie asked, his hair sticking out crazily everywhere. It was always funny to see him without his Dodgers ball cap. He only took it off at bedtime. "You're snoring," I said. "Oh," he said, I thought there was an emergency." "It is an emergency. I can't sleep." "I'm so sorry, Belle," he mumbled, and lay back down. I promised not to snore anymore. It was hard to be angry at Albie. He was kind and gentle, a big teddy bear when it came right down to it. A big, snoring teddy bear. "Aw, dust it," I muttered. Albie could have the room to himself. I grabbed my blanket and left, Leo padding after me. Not that I blamed him. Even a cat couldn't take Albie's snoring.
Hi, my name is Aisha and I work in the Teens Department at the main library. Today I'm going to be reading the first few pages of Many Points of Me by Caroline Gertler. If you like what you hear, I hope you check it out. Here's the thing about when your dad was a famous artist. He still lives. He still is. Because Mom is an art historian, I've always known that we talk about artists in the present tense. Even artists like Vermeer and Velázquez and Michelangelo, who died hundreds of years ago. That's a good thing, and a bad thing. A good thing because we still talk about Dad all the time. That's also why it's a bad thing. It's like we don't have to believe that he's actually gone. And just like Dad still is, I'm beginning to think that Theo Goodwin was my best friend. It's a cold, gray Sunday afternoon, late in January, and Theo and I are doing what we always do at the end of the weekend, drawing. I'm sitting where I've sat a million times before, on the floor of Theo's room, propped up in exactly the most comfortable position against the edge of his bed. I know this room like the back of my hand, where the wooden floorboards creak, which threads hang loose in the navy blue rug, how to angle my knees to hold up my sketch pad. Theo and I have been best friends all 11 years of our lives. We were born that way. Our moms have known each other since before they were pregnant with us. They're professors at the same college. We live in the same apartment building on the Upper West Side, and our birthdays are 2 days apart. Being best friends with Theo was hardly a choice.
To wrap up today's video, I'm going to be reading you the first few pages of Sal and Gabby Break the Universe by Carlos Hernandez. As always, if you like what you hear, don't forget to check out the book.
There's all sorts of bad advice out there about how to deal with bullies. Ignore them, stand up to them, tell a teacher, tell a parent, tell your dentist while he's jamming your teeth back into your face. The real way to deal with the bully is to stick a raw chicken in their locker. I had my showdown with Yasmani Robles just 3 days after I had started my new life at Coleco Academy of the Arts, a magnet school in the middle of Miami. To get in, you had to have good grades, pass an interview, and either submit a portfolio for painting or writing, or audition for theater or music. You'd think all the effort someone had to go through to get into Coleco would have kept out bullies, but I guess not. I guess there are just too many of them in the world. If your school only allowed in kids who never pick on anyone, you'd have an empty school. Whatever, it's not like I hadn't learned how to handle bullies back in Connecticut. On Wednesday, between 4th and 5th periods, I went to the lockers, along with 500,000 other kids. I stowed my history book and grabbed math so I could do my homework during lunch, then opened my bag of magic tricks and put on my gotcha stamp ring. We would be doing introductions in my 8th period theater class, and I thought I could use it to demonstrate some sleight of hand. Magic is kind of my thing. I had a minute before I needed to go, so I took out my diabetes bag and fished out my glucose meter. I thought I'd be alright until lunch, but I'd started to feel spacey and dreamy at the end of my last class. Blood sugar levels might be falling. Best to check now. As I rummaged, I noticed the tall kid next to me struggling to get his locker open. He was as Cuban as they come. Brown, built like a track and field champ, with a haircut so short you could see the bumpy skin of his scalp beneath what was left of his tiny curls. He'd wrestled with his combination lock yesterday too, and never figured it out, so he'd had to carry a full backpack of books to his next class. I'd had trouble with my lock on the first day, until I figured out you had to squeeze it as you turn the dial. And I'm a nice guy, so I said to him, "Hey man, my lock sucks too. The trick is to squeeze the top while..." That's all I got out before he punched his locker. The whole hallway grew a little quieter.